we're going to go a little bit further into the idea of Magid. We're discussing the idea of the godless that comes in originally, even according to the Arizal already, it comes in, godless Yishin and Sheni comes in during Ma'ariv and then leaves and then returns by the Seder. This is according to the Mishnah Chassidim and Sefer HaKavanos. Or the Rashash writes that it actually comes in and doesn't leave. It's only on an internal level, more subtle level, and then it comes in more chitzonius, an external level during the Seder. But we're holding now where we get to the idea of Magid. So what's the idea of Magid? Magid is the Ge'ulas Hadibur, the redemption of speech. So that speech is now going to become redeemed. And this is going to be the binyan of the main surah, of the main formation of the whole Seder night. That the main idea is the Haggadah, V'Yigav L'Bincha. This is the Ikar of the Seder is going to be in this area. So before we talk about what Magid is, let's start off with a simple shaila which is asked by the Shagas Aryeh in Simonei Yud Gimel and the Minchas Chinuch Mitzvah Chaf Aleph. It's asked by many of the Achronim asked this question. And the question is, what is the difference between Zechiras Yitzias Mitzrayim, the remembering of going out of Mitzrayim on the night of Pesach, versus the mitzvah, the general mitzvah of Zechiras Yitzias Mitzrayim, which is a mitzvah that we are obligated to do at all times throughout the entire year. So there's a few answers, and we'll get to some of the answers. One answer, which the Shagas Aryeh deals with, and is that the difference is that throughout the year we have to remember, and we could remember only with machshava, with schira could be belev, remembrance in the heart. And on the night of Pesach, there has to be specifically with dibur. You have to speak, audibly speak about Zechiras Yitzias Mitzrayim, about the going out of Egypt. That's one thing. Minchas Chinuch then deals with another thing, possibility that maybe tonight the mitzvah is, on the night of Pesach, the mitzvah is that we have to tell it over the story. We have to tell it over to a child. V'Yigav L'Bincha, that there's a mitzvah, a specific mitzvah, to tell it over to the child. Where in the other nights we have to remember it for ourselves, but not specifically say it over to the child or say it over to somebody else. Also, clearly, the mitzvah tonight, on the night of Pesach, is that not only do we have to remember to mark the event, to mark it in our minds to understand that it happened, but tonight we have to elaborate on the mitzvah and talk about it b'derech sipur, in a way of a story. And if you look actually at the Rambam in Perik Zayin, which we'll go through a little bit, in the beginning of the halacha, it says, mitzvah says shel Torah l'saper b'nisim v'nifloish and nasav v'seidim v'tzayim v'leil chamish asa b'nisim. That the mitzvah is l'saper. Throughout the year, the mitzvah is lahaskir, and tonight the mitzvah is not only to remember, to bring to memory, but also the idea of l'saper, to speak about it, and to tell it specifically in the form of a story. And we'll see this is very important in terms of our spiritual, mental, emotional development, and on a cosmic level, and on a pneumistic level, the idea of sipur yitzias mitzrayim, actually to speak it. A fourth answer is that tonight the mitzvah is, on the night of Pesach, the mitzvah is to do it in a way of question and answers. When the child will ask the question. So if it's not the child, it's somebody else. If you don't have a child, someone else asks the question. But the whole entire format is in a way of question and answer. This is another answer that there is a lot of lahalacha. This is not necessarily accurate, because even if you don't have a child or someone doesn't have to ask, you still have to say this in the halacha, the Shulchan Aruch rules that you have to still speak the Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim. But this is another answer. A fifth answer, is that every night we have to remember the going out of Egypt that happened then. Tonight we have to remember the going out of Egypt B'leil Chamisha Asa B'Nisan, as if it's happening on this night. So we're talking about an event not only that happened in the past, but it's happening, and it happened on this night. And moreover, in the sixth level of the answer would be that we have to remember not only that our ancestors left Egypt, but b'chol dor v'dor chaya hodem lir sasatzmei lahar sasatzmei kilo yotzim Mitzrayim. So this is what the Mishnah says, that in every generation, and specifically the Mishnah is talking about on the night of Pesach, because then the Mishnah continues, Lefikach, and like the Rambam writes, that Kishasoid, Adam Alay Lazar, Tzarech Lishtes, V'Meisef Derech Eretz. And therefore, because B'chol Dor V'Dor, which means on this night, you have to imagine as if you were leaving Egypt, therefore, you have to sit at Derech HaSeba, you have to sit reclining to show on an act of Cheres. Seventh answer would be that all of the nights of the years, we just have to remember them going out of Egypt. But in the language of the Rambam, mitzvah say l'saper b'nisim v'nifloi shenasa l'sein b'mitzrayim b'leil chamisha also b'nisim. That there's a mitzvah to speak about the miracles that happened tonight, which is also another addition that we don't have throughout the entire year, to speak about the miracles and wonders that happened during Yetzias Mitzrayim. An eighth answer, also from the Rambam, is that throughout the year, maybe you're Yotzei, you're fulfilled obligation by speaking about Yetzias Mitzrayim and talking about different events that happened from Yetzias Mitzrayim, or let's say talking about Kriyas Yamsuf. But on this night, the mitzvah is l'saper menisim floy shenasal v'sein mitzrayim b'leil chamisha asa menisim. The mitzvah is to talk about specifically the miracles that happened on this night, on the 15th, when we left Egypt. That's another answer. And perhaps the ninth answer or 10th answer would be that all of the year, we have to remember it. Tonight we also have to learn about it. Okay, this is what the chiluk, the distinction between what is on this night of Hanukkah, on this night on Pesach, what we have to say, versus throughout the entire year. This is in general. Now the question becomes, another question is, why don't we make a blessing, a bracha, if it's a mitzvah min HaTorah? To speak the Haggadah, or the Agadah, or Haggadah, which we said the two Nischois and the Vudram and the Mordechai, if it's called Haggadah or Agadah, which means to speak about it, to the Moshe Chesalev Haggadahs. So if the idea is to make it, that it's a mitzvah min HaTorah to speak about the Haggadah, to speak about Yetzias Mitzrayim in all these distinctions from the entire year, so why don't we make a bracha? It's a mitzvah, and every mitzvah we have to make a bracha. The Gemara says, there's a Yerushalmi that says, "Kol mitzvahs tun is bracha." We learn from the Edelchas, Aluchas, Evin, Torah va mitzvah, that just like Torah needs a bracha, Kishem Hashem Eker Hava Gadol L'Keinu. The same thing also, every mitzvah needs a bracha. So why don't we make a bracha before we start the Yetzias Mitzrayim, before we start the Haggadah? Why don't we make a blessing? So the truth is that the Rosh in a tshuva in Klal Chavdalet asks this question, and he says that something interesting. He basically writes that he says there's a lot of mitzvahs that we do to remember the going out of Egypt. So the mitzvahs that we do that are going out of Egypt is there's the Schiras Yetzias Mitzrayim, which is the Iker. The main idea is the Schira, that you have to remember it. And then there's how you remember it. The how you remember it, so you do B'choris, you're Kaddish L'Kol B'chor, you sanctify the newborn, so therefore that's the way you do it. But he says the Iker mitzvah, the main idea of the mitzvah is the Schira. And the Schira, you don't make a bracha on the Schira. You don't make a bracha on something Shebelev, something of the heart. And really the Maharal in Gvuras Hashem writes this a little more clearly, that he says because it's not a davar sheyesh bo ma'aseh, it's not a thing that has an action. In Perik Samach Bez. Now this works according to some of the interpretations that we said before. What's the difference between this night and all the other nights? But we just explained that on this night, specifically, what's the difference of this night? One of the main differences, l'saper, we have to speak about it, and speak about it through words, and speak about it through story, through speaking about it. So then that's not going to answer the question, because here the mitzvah is specifically on Pesach night to actually speak about it. So why don't we make a bracha? So another interpretation that's brought down is because it's a bracha on a bracha. You don't make a bracha for birchas hamazon. You don't say Hashem. You don't make a bracha. Baruch atah Hashem. Thank Hashem for giving us the ability that we should make a blessing after eating the meal. The meaning after the meal, that itself is the blessing. Some Rishonim write that has to do with Kiddush, that we yotze already, we fulfill the obligation with Kiddush. Then the Simonei HaSeder writes two things. The Simonei HaSeder, from the school of Rashi, he writes two things. He says, first of all, you already made a bracha from Birchas Kishma already by Ma'ariv. So you already yotze the bracha already before. That's one interpretation. So like Kiddush, this is already even before. This is the Birchas Kishma before. He says the second answer is, that we say Asher Galanu at the end of Magid, we lift up the cup and we make a blessing. So he says that the Shabbat, like I said, that's actually the blessing that we make for the Haggadah. The blessing that we say afterwards. Now this is a big tzorach here. This is something that has to be understood. The Chassam Sofer asked a shaila, and this is a Peladik shaila, and it's a Moirdik answer. The Chassam Sofer in the Droshes asked a shaila. It's like this: every mitzvah we know that when you make a bracha for something, you have to make the bracha over l'siyas. You have to make the bracha before. You want to eat an apple, you make the bracha before the apple, and then you eat the apple. You want to do a mitzvah, you want to shake the lulav and esrog. So first you make a bracha, and then you shake the lulav and esrog. The mitzvah has to be over l'siyas before you do it. So he says, so why by the Haggadah night? On the Leila Seder, why in the night of the Seder do we, according to the Simonei HaSeder, the bracha, the blessing that we make on the Haggadah is said after the Haggadah? Why'd you say it before the Haggadah? Why do you say Asher Galonu afterwards? So the Chassam Sofer says, this is a very powerful thing. He says that in Halacha we find that there are certain times that a person does make a blessing after. For example, Netilas Yadayim could be one example. That's Machlokes Rishonim, because your hands are maybe not clean, so you wouldn't want to make a blessing. But a more classic example, which the Gemara brings in Yevamos, is a Gershon Iskayr. A convert that's going through the process of conversion. So what happens with the process of conversion? So they can make a bracha. They can before they enter the mikveh. They can say Asher Kedishonu Mitzvosav, who sanctified me on the mitzvah of this conversion, because they're not yet Jewish. So there's no yet sanctification. They can't say that. So what the ger has to do, the convert that's going through the process of conversion, they go to the mikveh, and then after they go to the mikveh, they make the bracha, and then they dip again. So the Chassam Sofer says like this, that what happens on the night of Yetzias Mitzrayim, on the night that we celebrate the Leil HaSeder, is that tonight we start off the Seder as before our conversion process. In other words, just like Yetzias Mitzrayim, they're going out of Egypt. L'kachtem goy mikerev goy, we became a people as we left Mitzrayim, as we left Egypt. So this is not only something that we celebrate in times past, that we're remembering something that happened in the past, and therefore we're going through the experience that happened in the past. He's saying you're actually going through the experience right now. So when you start to say that, when you say that, you're in a level of katnos, in Orchatz, Karpas, and Yachatz, and then Magid is, we're going to start telling our narrative, start telling the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim, of the going out of Egypt. That first we were idol worshippers, and then Hashem chose us. And first, first we were slaves in Egypt, and then we were taken out of Egypt. So it's not just that we're speaking about something that happened years ago. We're saying that that's the way we're experiencing tonight. That we're going through this conversion process. So he says the reason why we can't make the blessing before is because we have not yet gone through this process. And we're like the convert that's being converted. That we can only make the bracha after we say Maggid. After we say Maggid, Asher Galonu v'Golos of Seder, we say the entire bracha. And we say that we now are fully redeemed, and now we fully exist and emerge as a child of Klal Yisrael. Then we can make the bracha. So the bracha has to come lacher. And the truth is, this is very interesting, because this is what the Rambam actually writes in Halacha, Perek Zayin Halacha Daled, when he says, Sarach lahaskel v'genus l'sayim b'shvach. So the Rambam says that we have to start speaking about our lowly state, where we came from, and then how we developed as a people, and it talks about how we started off as idol worshippers. We start to speak about everything that happened in Egypt, to Pharaoh in Egypt. And we conclude with speaking about the miracles and wonders, which is the shitta of the Rambam, the opinion of the Rambam, that we have to speak about it and speak about the miracles of the experience. And that we were chosen tonight. So the chosenness that we were chosen as Bechir of Klal Yisrael comes on this night. This is what we have to experience on the night of Leil HaSeder. And now we have to talk about what actually we're doing. So before we get a little bit more into the basic structure of the Haggadah, because in Magid we have to understand the basic structure of what we're actually trying to achieve, we have to discuss first a little bit what is the idea in general about Magid. So the general idea of Magid is that it's going to be the geula of dibur, the redemption of speech. In general, the idea of speech is freedom, but we're going to talk a little bit further. But let's just start with the Chumash. Let's start with the beginning of the book of Shemais, and we'll see how this is developed in the Psukim. In general, the month of Nisan is connected to the letter Hey. Hey is Behei Nivra Olam. The Hey, the world is created with the letter Hey. So in the Aleph Beis, the Sefer Yitzir writes that Aleph Mem Shin are the Imois, are the mother letters. Those are the main source of the letters. Sh, the beginning, end, and synthesis of sound. That's the Aleph Mem Shin. And then there are the Kfulis letters, the letters that are double, the 7 double letters. And then there's this Yud Beis Pshutis, the 12 simple letters. So the double letters are, for example, Beis and Veis, and Gimel, and what the Yemenites have like a Jimel, or a Dalid and a Valid, with like more like a TH, like Kol Amayr Be'echad. So you have the idea of the two Dalids. The first of the simple letters is the letter Hey. Why is Hey is the creative letter of creation? Because Hey is the beginning of out-breath. Ha! That's the beginning of an out-breath, an exhale. So the entire month of Nisan is connected with the binyan, this type of formulating and creating speech. So let's look at the beginning of let's look at the beginning of the Chumash of Shmos. So in Shmos, we have the Psukim start like this. Shmos, literally the Chumash Shmos means Eila Shmos B'nai Yisrael. These are the names of Klal Yisrael. These are the names of the people that entered into Egypt. This is the way the Torah starts. Eila Shmos, these are a named people. A named people, which means a people of very strong distinction. And the names them. These are names of Reuven, Shimon, Levi. These are Shem Agulasam Nikru. They're called on their redemption, like the Medrash says. They're called on their past. They're called on their present. They're called on their future. A people with a proud name. Then the Torah says that Yosef passes away, and that entire generation. So the entire parsha is called Shmos, which is names. And then it starts saying, Pasuk Zayin, Bnei Yisrael paru v'yishitzu v'yiru v'yamtzu moed moed. And the Bnei Yisrael, children of Israel, started multiplying and proliferating to an extreme amounts. Says the Sephorah, what's the language of v'yishitzu? V'yishitzu, and they multiply like from the word shrotzim. Notu ledarke shrotzim. Shrotzim is creepy crawly things. That the people became, they proliferated. They became so many, but they became filled. They filled the earth, which means a people that started off with a very proud distinction, a very proud name, a shame, all of a sudden are reduced to being called shrotzim. Creepy, crawly things. And then the pasuk says like this: they become very strong, and then something very strange happens. They start being enslaved, and they start working avodas perach, very hard labor. And interestingly, the psukim, the Torah doesn't tell us anywhere that the people are complaining or speaking or arguing and saying this is not the right path, we shouldn't become slaves. They're not complaining. It just they seem to be very muted as a people. Then the pasuk in Tezvav says like this: they seem to be in a state of deep silence, deep trauma, if you wish. And the Melech Mitzrayim, the king of Egypt, comes to the maidservants of the Hebrews. Asher Shema Achas, which the name of one is Shifra, and Shema Sheni is Pua. Which the name of one is Shifra, the name of the other one is Pua. So they're given names. Come along, Chazal, and tell us. The Gemara in Soita Yid Aleph says, no, Shifra and Pua is not really Shifra and Pua. It's Yocheved and Miriam, or Yocheved and Elisheva, Rashi uses Yocheved and Miriam, that they're not their actual names. Shifra, Shem Shapers of Vlad, Pua, Loshin Tzaka, Kiyoda Afua, that he says that these are names of the wet nurses that help the children being born, but they're actually not names. So these are people that start off with a name, with a distinction, clearly defined each person, and then they're reduced to a people that have no name. And when it finally does name them, they're not named. It's not their real names. A few psukim later, it's the most strange verse, because in Pehsat Beis, in the second chapter, right away when it starts talking about the birth of Moshe, what does the pasuk say? Vayelech ish beis Levi, a man from the house of Levi, vayikach es bas Levi, and this man from the house of Levi takes a daughter from the house of Levi, a daughter of Levi. Doesn't say that it was Yocheved. It doesn't say it was Amram. Doesn't say that Amram, the man that we know will be the father of Moshe. It says he's a son from the house of Levi who takes a daughter from the house of Levi. An unnamed man takes an unnamed woman. Vatara isha vatela ben, and Vatara isha, and the woman is pregnant, and she gives birth, and she has a child, and the child is not named. They see that he's a good, so Chazal tell us that Tuv Yishmoy or Tov Shmoy, but the actual Torah doesn't actually give him his name. He's a nameless man. Moshe Rabbeinu is a nameless child. This is one of the first times in the Torah that we find this. Always when the Torah tells us about someone that's born, immediately it says, what's his name? Why is he named? Yitzchak is called Yitzchak, and Yaakov is called Yaakov, and it tells us why they're named. Or the Shvatim tells us exactly why each of the ones of the tribes of the sons of Yaakov are called these names. Here the Torah doesn't give us a name. Very strange. When Moshe Rabbeinu is finally called to the burning bush, he says when he comes, he says they're going to ask you, what's your name? They're going to ask what's your name. Because a name, the basic definition of what it means to be a human being is to be named and to name. We have in the beginning of the Torah when Adam Rishon, that he was brought, every animal was brought in front of him, and the human being was able to create context, to define, to contextualize his reality. How does he do that? How does Adam do that? By naming. He names everything, he defines everything. In contrast, a people that has lost their name is somebody that has lost his identity. This is a deep level of existential enslavement. They've lost their name, they lost their distinction. Not only have they lost their power to speech, which is the power to communicate and to dream and to discuss and to discover, but they have lost everything. They've lost their complete name. They've lost their complete identity. This is what the Zohar in Parsha Shmois, in Chafei, many other places, the Zohar talks about that in Mitzrayim, in Egypt, Klal Yisrael experienced Golas HaDibur. They experienced the exile of speech, that speech itself was in a state of exile. They lost their ability to create, to speak, to dream. They lost their humanity. A slave cannot express or reveal who he really is, because who he is really imposed by someone else. There's no internal reality that's being expressed. This is what a person means, that they're enslaved. A person that's enslaved to billboards or to culture, and they have no internal life, so they have nothing to speak about. That means you can talk, you can blabber, you can talk lashon hara, but you're not talking real words. You're not speaking from an authentic place. You're not really expressing yourself. So Moshe Rabbeinu is a kvad peh. Moshe Rabbeinu is a person that's hard to speak. And Moshe says, "V'hem lo yishmuli," they're not going to listen to me. So the deeper understanding is that Moshe Rabbeinu's inability to speak is because the people can't listen. And the people can't listen because Moshe can't speak. And they're both stuck. They're stuck. There's no longer any dreams, aspirations, longings, desires. And when they do finally speak, Moshe Rabbeinu says that they're speaking lashon hara. It says that when it says that Moshe says indeed it's known this thing, what happened when he killed the Egyptian, or he killed his inner Egyptian, because Mitzvah is Maki Moshe, and he buries it underneath the ground, and he becomes his new identity. So it says the Chazal bring down, Rashi brings it down from Shema Medrash Rabbah, that the Moshe Rabbeinu Hayatama, Ma Chatas Yisrael Mekol Shigol Umois Lias Yedov Ve'avodas Perach Avaroyin Yeshem Roim Lekach. He sees that they speak, but they're talking with not real voice. This is a very deep level of trauma, the eclipse of their voice, the eclipse of their identity. They lost their sense of self. What changes everything? And this is very important for us to understand in terms of the Seder night, to really krich out of our golos, to help Hashem, allow Hashem to take us out of our golos, out of our exiles, out of our constrictions and limitations and things that are holding us back and quieting us and muting us, to really help us get out of the situation. Through Magid. But how do we start? So the Pasuk says like this, in Perik Beis, Pasuk Chagimel. It was in those days, Vayamach Melech Mitzrayim, the king of Egypt dies. The king of Egypt dies, and the people cry out from the hard labor, and their prayer and their vatal shavosim, and their cry was heard by Elokim in avodah. What actually happened? So the Tziv, the Chaskuni, they write that when the king of Egypt died, the people are working, they're enslaved, they're stuck for hundreds of years, or many, many years. They're stuck in the condition of slavery, enslavement. They lost their voice, they lost their identity, they lost a sense of self. And they believe that their condition is ontological, that it's existential, it's who they are. This is who I am, a slave. This is my condition, this is my smallness, this is who I am. But then all of a sudden there's a change in the action. Either they got a day off, or they thought they were going to get a day off, or the slave masters, the Egyptians, were mourning, so they didn't bother them to work. Something changed in their narrative. For one moment, for one day, they experienced something different. They were stuck, and all of a sudden they were unstuck for one day, because they realized that there's actually an alternative. There's another possibility. So what do? They cry out. Vayizaku. They cry out. What do they cry out? Says the Orach Chaim HaKadosh, they don't cry out in prayer. They're not crying out and saying, Hashem, please help us. They don't even know that's even a possibility. Vayizaku, they just cry, it hurts. Vatal shavasim elakim in avodah. Vatal shavasim, and Hashem hears. Vayishol elakim is na'akasim. Hashem hears their cry as a prayer. But all they did was they spoke. There was a softness. There was no kvedas. They weren't stuck any longer. There was a nirpim. There was a softness in the below, that they were able to cry out and express themselves and yearn and long for something different. And when Hashem saw that Hashem is silcha, Hashem is our shadow, Hashem heard our prayers, was able to hear that brokenness, that break in the monotone of the day in, day out of the routine of slavery. All of a sudden there was another possibility, and that brought us to our freedom. So there was a relaxing of the inner hardness, of the inner slavery, the inner, like the abuse or the softening that occurred on the one level that opened up a new reality for them. So what happens when Paro hears about this? At the end of the parsha, it says, Paro says, "Tichbed avodah, make it harder on them, kinipim hema, because they became soft." Paro actually also realizes that there's a softening of the people. The softening of the people means that they're now able to express, they're able to cry, even just to say, "Ouch, it hurts. I need something different. I'm stuck here. I need something different." And this is the beginning of their freedom. The beginning of the freedom from a voiceless people that are stuck is the beginning of the crying out. And this is what Pesach, this is what the Arizal writes in Magid, that Pesach, the word Pesach comes from the word Pesach. Even though Sach is with sin, but sometimes Sichana is also spelled with a Samach. That's Pesach means the mouth that speaks. Paroi, like the Arizal writes in Sefer Lekutim, is Pera, negative speech. And what Paro does is he puts us in a state of avodas perach. Perach is perach, weak mouth. Like the Gemara Chazal tell us also in Sod.Lec, So what happens is that we are experiencing perach, pera, and the work that we were done to slaves was in Pisem Viramses. That was the buildings that we had to build were in Pisem Viramses. What is Pisem? So it's Pi Tohim, the mouth of the abyss, like Chazal are doing. And Ramses, what is Ramses? Ramses is actually is Ramses, which we know according to many traditions is actually the Melech Mitzrayim, which Ramses is Moses. It's the negative side of Moshe Rabbeinu. This is all what happened in the Avodah in Mitzrayim. So there was Pera with Perach, and we have to achieve Pesach. Mitzrayim, the word Mitzrayim is Yotzar, like the Yetzer, the inclination, and there's a Mem and a Mem in the beginning, a Mem in the end. The Mem in the beginning, like the Sefer HaBoyer talks about and speaks in Zohar, that the Mem in the beginning represents the open mouth and the closed mouth. And sometimes there's a constriction and there's limitations and there's the mouth is not flowing correctly. When we leave Mitzrayim, the first place that we come after Yetzias Mitzrayim is Al Piyat Tohaim, like the Pasuk says in Perek Ydalet, and we come to the Piyat Tohaim. So it says Rashi B'Shem Chazal that Piyat Tohaim, we come to Piyat Cheres, the mouth of freedom. So Rashi says that Piyat Cheres, the mouth of freedom, is actually Piyat Tohaim. It's the same place. It's the mouth of the abyss, which swallows and doesn't allow for speech. But now that same place now becomes the mouth of redemption. So there's a total transformation of the place of the mouth of the abyss, the mouth that swallows itself and doesn't allow itself to speak and is not able to open up its mouth. And there's liberated speech. Liberated speech. This is redeemed speech. We're able to express. We're able to yearn. And this is what the tachlis of Yetzias Mitzrayim is. That we become free people. That we're able to use our language in a correct way, in a healthy way, in a holy way. The words of the righteous are speaking pleasantly and nicely and lashon nekiya. It's interesting that Chazal, the beginning of Pesachim, the beginning of Tractate of Pesachim, which talks about the Orla Ba'asar that we have to, on the night of Pesach, the night before Pesach, we should check the chametz. So the language of the Gemara, the Mishnah is oir, light. And the Gemara has a whole diyam. Why does it call light if it's actually in fact night? So the end of the Gemara says, and it's lashon nekiya, it's pleasant language. So the Gemara says, La'olam mishana, a person should always speak b'lashon nekiya, a person should always speak in a clean language, in a nice language. This all has to do with Pesach, because Pesach is about this redemption of speech, and redemption in a positive speech, in a positive way of speaking. This is the entire idea of Magid, to redeem speech, to manipulate speech in a healthy way, in a holy way. There's a Gevaldik of Ort, very, very quickly, we spoke about it many times, when it says Boy al Pare in the beginning of Parshas Boy, and it says, and just as Boy al Pare, just as come to Pare, it doesn't say to do what. And Moshe Rabbeinu says that Machar there's going to be, that tomorrow will be Arba. So everyone has to Shaila, the Medrash has to Shaila. How do we know from Boy al Pare, when Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu just to do Boy al Pare, just go to Pare, how does he know that it should be Arba? So, okay, there's many different answers that the Medrash brings, but the Megala Mukis, the Talmud of Megala Mukis of Shamshas Topoler, a big tzaddik, a big mukubal, which a lot of people learn as Torah on Erev Pesach, says that Boy al Pare, boy, the letters Beis Aleph, what does it mean Boy al Pare to do? Why should you come to Pare? Boy al Pare means take the letters Beis Aleph and put it into the letters Pare, because Beis is interchangeable with a Pei. They both are lip letters. Beis, Pei. And Ayin and Aleph are both throat letters. So take the Beis Aleph and you put it into the letters Pei, Resh, Ayin, Hey. So instead of a Pei, you have a Beis. And instead of an Ayin, you have an Aleph. You have the word Arba. This is what Rav Pinson says. So what's the word? What is he trying to say? He's trying to say that Moshe Rabbeinu now became a Mesaper. Moshe became a master of speech. That Hashem just had to tell him, Boy Apare, and Moshe was ready to figure out how we can use speech to create new realities. This is the redemption of speech. And this is what we have to do. The whole tachlis of Yetzias Mitzrayim is lamanta saper. That not only is your speech gonna be redeemed, that you're not gonna have, and you're gonna have a name, and you're gonna be named, and you're gonna be able to name, and you're gonna be able to speak, but you're also gonna be able to be misaprim, to be storytellers. Which answers a very puzzling question. The question is, in the Haggadah, which Be'ez Hashem will learn, but it's a Mishnah. The Mishnah says that whoever Gamliel says, whoever doesn't say these things, is not yotz, is not fulfilled obligation. Pesach, matzah, mar. You have to say the word Pesach, matzah, mar. What do you have to say? Pesach, matzah, mar. Say Pesach. Why do we eat the Pesach? We eat it because we eat the carbon Pesach, the offering of Pesach, because Hashem skipped over our doors. Why do we eat the matzah? The question is, why do we eat the matzah? And we say, because the matzah didn't have time to rise, the bread didn't have time to rise until we left Egypt. Why do we eat the maror? Because the Egyptians enslaved us and bittered our life. So the obvious question is, on this Rabbi Gamliel, is Pesach, matzah, and maror. The reason why we eat Pesach, matzah, and maror is not because of that. The reason why we eat Pesach because it's the mitzvah to eat korban Pesach. The reason why we eat matzah because be'er techlo matzah, because it's the mitzvah to eat matzah. It's not because Shali Hispik could say this on his saying because it didn't have time to rise. Even before it didn't have time to rise, we were eating matzah and Pesach and maror. And certainly maror doesn't say anywhere in the Torah that you eat maror because very maror is chayim. It happens to be that the word maror is connected to the word merirs, which is bitter. So how could Rav Gamliel say that that's the reason why we go? This is why we do it. The second question is, why do we have to say it? If we didn't say Pesach, Matzah, Mar, we didn't so, and if we didn't say it, what's the big deal? So Rav Gamliel is saying like this, Bekitzer. Rav Gamliel is saying is that tonight, from the Pasuk it says, you shall say, tonight is the night of saying. Tonight is not only the night of stating halacha, the law, but tonight is a night of storytelling. And the night of storytelling, we have to tell a story. So yes, Pesach we eat because it's a mitzvah of carbon Pesach. Matzah we eat because it's a mitzvah to eat matzah. Maror we eat because it's a mitzvah to eat maror. That's the law. And then there's the narrative, then there's the lore. On Pesach night, we have to misaper Yetzias Mitzrayim. We have to tell a story. A story needs a narrative. And a narrative, this is the narrative. We eat maror because, yes, there's a mitzvah. But the reason why we're telling the story about maror is because maror reminds us of the bitterness that we had in Egypt. The reason why we're telling us the story about eating matzah, because matzah reminds us that we were in great haste. We left Egypt and didn't have time for the bread to rise. What's the story connected with Korban Pesach? Pesach means passed over, that Hashem jumped over our door, so to speak, and therefore we were saved. So tonight is the mitzvah l'saper l'tzias Mitzrayim. Tonight the mitzvah is to be storytellers. And at the peak of Yitzias Mitzrayim, at the going out of Egypt, what happens at the peak of going out of Egypt? They finally reach the sea. And what happens at the sea? So the first thing is, the first thing they're told, why are you crying out to me? Speak to the people of Israel and let them travel on. So Chazal tells us, the Zohar Kodesh tells us, that when they finally reached the peak of going out of Mitzrayim, going out of Egypt, they reach a level of Atik. And when they reach a level of Atik, which is a place of silence, Hashem told them, now you have to be silent. This is like, we came from a place where there was no speech to a place that Klal Yisrael not only became a people with a voice, but a people that were complaining, and that was a positive thing. Not only the people that were able to speak and express and desire and long and yearn, but people that were able to become storytellers, Laman Tesaper, that we should become storytellers. And now at the peak of Yetzias Mitzrayim, when they finally reached the sea, they're told to remain silent, because this is a silence that transcends. This is a silence that transcends speech. There's a silence that comes from a place of trauma, and a place that you can't speak, and you're so stuck, and you have nothing to say, and you can't say it, and there's nothing inside that could be said. This is one level. When they finally reach Kiryas Yamsuf, which they reach the Madrega, they reach a place which is a silence, which is a comfortable silence, which is beyond sound. But that was not the end. What happened at the end? And this also actually happens at the Seder. What do we do at the Seder? So the Tosefta and Pesachim writes, and this is what is brought on La'alacha in Tov Pei Aleph. The Shulchan Aruch says that till what time should we speak about the Seder? Until what time at night? Until sleep takes hold of you. Shina is connected to Yashon, to old, Atik Yermet, to the ancient one. So what actually happens is like this. When they reach, let's go back to Kiryas Yamsuf. Kiryas Yamsuf, they're told they're brought to a place of silence. But then when they cross the sea, at the Tachlis of Yetzias Mitzrayim, when they finally cross over the sea, Yetzias Mitzrayim, what happens then? They sing a song. They sing the Shira. Which means that the Tachlis of Yetzias Mitzrayim is that they reach a point that's even beyond Atik. Which means it's a song that comes from a place of deep silence. There's a song that comes from a need for the desire to express, which is a song, which is a lower level of song, which is a level of dibur, where you're still, the I is being expressed, and Hashem says, I don't need your songs. I need you to be quiet. But then there's a place that you get to a place that it's so deep and so holy and so unified and so misyached, that in that place of perfect union, then it says, now you can sing Oz Yashir. This is a shir of loss and love, the song of the future. And this is actually exactly what's supposed to be happening at the Seder. You go through the entire Magid. And what's the entirety of Maggid? The redemption of speech. That you have to think about what it is in your own life, in your Chayav Pratim, like the Peleyoitz writes, that the night of speaking about the going out of Egypt, the Ram says, the Saper Miniflois is also in your personal life. To think about the things in your own life that you're stuck, and you have to get out, and you need redemption, and to express it, and start with a kvetch, with an I, Yitzaku. Hashem will hear your prayer, like the Rechaim HaKadosh writes. Just cry out. And then you start speaking about it and talking about it to your loved ones and to your family and the people that are around, to the Selabayis, to create yichud of das, to speak to other people and start speaking about it. Now that you're speaking about it and expressing, and there's now a redemption, finally comes the idea of, at the end of Magid, you're able to sing a beautiful song. And you actually, there's a Bechir in Klal Yisrael, and you can make a bracha, finally you became a Yid. And you can sing that song with a great desire and praise. Then you go further into the Seder. As you get deeper and deeper into the Seder, you reach a point at the Fanashina until a place where you're half asleep and half awake after the fourth cup, or sort of by the fourth cup, where you're liked by the place of the Shir of there. Hashem says, I need to be quiet. I don't need any more songs. At the peak of Nirtzah, I don't need any songs. And then there's a place that songs that even come after Nirtzah. What's the songs that come after Nirtzah? A place that you're already accepted, you're already fine, you're already arrived, you're ready, Batika Tolam Milsa, you're ready in place. That's the songs that come after the Seder. After the Seder, the Minig Yisrael, the custom amongst Jews is to sing different types of shir, different types of songs. Like people say Shir Hashirim, and Chagadia, different songs that people say. On one level, these songs sound like drunken ballads. They're songs, usually you're overstuffed, you're overtired, you're a little shikker, and you're singing songs that are like children rhymes. But this is the deepest secret. These are the deeper songs, because these are the songs that come from a place of deep silence. It's a place that you're not so conscious, you're not so aware, you're half asleep, half awake. You're nim tim v'lotir. This is where that level, and this is where you're going to sing those songs. That's the shira that we reach of Ozi Hashem Moshe B'nei Yisrael, that the shira of Asilamu. So this Bekitzer is now, we have a little understanding of what the idea of Magid is. And Be'ezer Hashem, next week we'll continue, and we're going to do just maybe one or two shurim just on the Haggadah itself to show, and then the Soifa Dibur is mem. So the two mems represent this these two speeches. So there's a speech at the beginning where you start something, and then when you conclude. So it says in Sifra HaSod that in Mitzrayim there was the yetzer, the inclination, caused that the speech was not in a correct manner. So whatever they open their mouth things that they shouldn't say, and they close their mouth of things that they should have said. So that shot is there's a tsar, there's a constriction on that form of speech, and Moshe Rabbeinu brings redemption to Mitzrayim, because Moshe Rabbeinu is das, which is consciousness, which is awareness, which he spoke about. So that's the big kids of the idea.
I think that still has a question.
Yeah.
I was just thinking a very side note tangentially. Pesach, Marur, Matzah all have like a hidden hay when you orate it, but when you don't, when it's just written, it looks like it is. So maybe we know that there's something about the hay, the Shechina, the Malchus, that we're trying to bring out of Gullus, trying to bring it to life, because things on the page remaining in a certain way are in Gullus, are kind of dead. So when we actually orate it, we orate the Haggadah, then it comes to life. And maybe Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, was it Rav Shimon ben Gamliel?
Yeah.
Gamliel is saying also these three things uniquely only have that one letter that come out when they're orated. Pesach, Marur, Matzah. There's a hay.
It's possible. I mean, hay is the hay mitzvah sapeh. Hay, speech is always connected with the letter hay. But I hear what you're saying, that there's a hidden hay. There is a hidden hay in the Haggadah, which there's a hidden fifth dimension, which we'll have to talk about. We mentioned before, there is a hidden fifth. Everything's in pairs, but then there's a hidden fifth. There's a higher madriga. Yeah. Say there? No, there's a question. What's the question? You can ask.
This doesn't really relate to today's share, yesterday's share. If
Yeah.
I could ask a question.
Sure.
You said very quickly that Haggadah is lashon begadim, which is a way of sweetening things.
Yeah.
What does that mean? That begadim is a way?
Not begadim, migadim.
Oh, what is that?
That's sweets. In Chazal, that's cool. That's migadim is like sweet candies, sweet sugar things. The idea of the Haggadah is to bring sweetness. The Hamtaka. This is actually exactly what we talked about. When you're speaking about something, you're expressing it, you're allowing to give it voice. That's how you're sweetening the situation. That's why you're breaking out of that situation, out of that galus. The dibur itself is the aschalas ha'gula, is the beginning of the redemption. Yeah.
Okay. We spent a lot of time talking about Moshe and the significance of Moshe in speech for Maggid, and yet we know that except for one little tiny place, he's not mentioned in the Haggadah. And there's obviously, we know there are many explanations for this, but
yeah.
Could we say that one reason why Moshe is not mentioned in the Haggadah is because Moshe, at least in this day and age, Moshe is in Gullus. and that we don't mention his name because he's in Gullus because we're in Gullus, and our Gullus right now, although it's a different nature, kind of parallels the enslavement of the Jews that we talked about in the beginning of Shmos. Can we say that?
You could say that. I just want to say, because we're going a lot with the Rambam, so I just want to read you what the Rambam says, which is very interesting. The Rambam in Perek Zayin Halacha Beis says like this: Mitzvah lo haidia labanim afil lo shalom. There's a mitzvah to tell your children even if they don't ask the question. According to the intelligence of the child, that's how the father teaches him. If the child is a fool or a young child, you say, Bini, my child, we were all in Egypt, slaves, like that slave and that other maidservant. And this night Hashem took us out of Egypt. That's if the child is a child. If the child is a wise child, he's older and he's wise, so you explain what happened in Egypt, and the miracles that occurred through Moshe Rabbeinu. So the Rambam basically says it's an issue of the intelligence of the child. You tell a little child Moshe Rabbeinu took us out of Egypt, they say, okay, Moshe Rabbeinu took you out of Egypt. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't take us out of Egypt, Hashem took us out of Egypt. But if you tell it to a little child, he's not going to understand the nuance. Only when the child becomes older and more intelligent could you start explaining him, yes, Hashem took us out of Egypt. And he used the instrument and the person, which is called Moshe Rabbeinu, who allowed us to get us out of Egypt. In other words, it depends on the level of the intelligence of the child. But I would say, Apipnimius, the real, on the oimic level, is that the reason why Moshe Rabbeinu is not mentioned in Haggadah, he's only mentioned in Chaga very, very tangentially, is because we're Moshe. We're the character of the story. We're not talking about someone that happened to somebody else. We're Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay, we're also Klal Yisrael. We're also Parei, incidentally. But we're all the characters. So the hero of the story is us. And therefore we're not mentioned. Yes, Shlomo.
So, one other thing though.
Yes.
So, it's kind of following in my same position with Moshe and Gullus.
Yeah.
That's why it's not mentioned.
Yeah.
But we could parallel analogize the Haggadah with Torah Shebiksav, and it says what it says.
Right.
And yet, when we sit at the table, we don't just rely solely on the text, but we are supposed to have discussion,
Correct.
Dig into it.
Correct.
And then when we dig into it, we're actually we actually can talk about Moshe as much as we want.
For sure.
And then so that discussion at the Seder is actually akin to the oral tradition.
That's correct. That is correct. That's correct. Yes. That is correct. But once it's oral tradition, we're guiding in the Rambam's perception of these ideas is that we're guiding the conversation. So we know when it becomes too much focus on Moshe and less focus on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So we can actually guide it in the correct manner. But Chazal don't want to set it up and say this is the way you're going to do it, because the average person maybe not going to be so nuanced a relationship to the text. So they're going to read it, and if you sit down on the Seder night and you tell a story like this, that many years ago there was a people of Israel that were slaves to a very wicked king called Pharaoh, and then a very charismatic leader called Moshe Rabbeinu stood up to the king, and he spoke to the king. He spoke truth to power, and he convinced the king to take us out of Egypt. Your lo yotzei dei chavasi. You did not fulfill the obligation of speaking about going out of Egypt. You missed the boat. So the ikir is we have to remember in the Nisim and the Flourish and the Sapir, we have to speak about the miracles and wonders that Hashem did for us as we left Egypt. And again, not only as we left Egypt in the past, but as we're leaving Egypt every single b'chol day v'dor b'chol yom v'yom. Okay, we're going to continue Be'ez Hashem next week. Everyone should have a Givaldik Shabbos. Wherever you are, make sure you're alone. And Hashem is always with you. Shabbos.
We'll see everyone on Monday.
Next Hashem.